Hi again, and welcome to Why I Love Valiant Comics, Part 2. My love of Valiant Comics is about 20 years old now. I started collecting them back in the 90s with the original company. I didn't get started from the very beginning. I wasn't that lucky. The first mention that I ever heard of Valiant Comics was, like many others I'm sure, in the pages of Wizard magazine. Heard them describing a character that they called Conan the Barbarian in Iron Man's armor. That would have been X-O Men of War. That issue, that series, that title, the character inspired me. That's where the core of my love for Valiant Comics comes from. The characters, the stories. I'm an avid reader. I've read hundreds of books, and the good ones, even, 9-part series, 12-part series, unending series. I've read a lot of them multiple times. I love good stories. And that's what Valiant did right back in the 90s. That's what led me to X-O Man of War. I started with that. Very soon thereafter, picked up Bloodshot. Loved that as well. And went on from there. I didn't get in early on with the Harbinger, the Magnus, the original Rye. I wasn't that lucky, like I said. I was there in time for Unity with Eternal Warrior. And the crossing over of all the major titles in Unity itself. That's where I made the acquaintance of most of the other characters. Solar, Rye, Archer and Armstrong, Shadow Man, even the Harbinger kids. I learned about mostly through the crossover in Unity. I liked them all. If I had the money, I would have collected them all back then. Didn't have the money. Had to do what I could. At the time I was still reading X-Men and other things as well, but no more. These days money's too tight. I've got to put my money where my love is. So Valiant has been a love of mine since those days. So much so that if I picked up this camera and went over to my closet, I could show you my 6 or 7 short boxes full of all the old Valiants. That's where I pulled these out of here tonight. I loved them that much that even years after they were done and it was a dead universe, I wanted the stories. And not only that, but I wanted the stuff I had missed back in the day, because it didn't matter if the series was over. It was important to me. It was connected to that world. And like every other comic book fan, to some degree, I'm a completionist. I wanted to have them all. It wasn't possible early on. Slowly, over the course of a few years, I managed to spend time and money and acquire pretty much every old comic that the original Valiant had put out. I was never that much into the Acclaim stuff. By the time they had kicked out Jim Shooter and strangled the goose that was laying the golden eggs in order to try and make it lay more. By the time they went the Acclaim route and rebooted everything the first time, I was done. I was done pretty much from the time Birthquake came rolling out, when they were doubling the number of titles just to try and bring in more revenue. So never saw the end of that completely. So I collected up to the end of the regular stories, the series that I loved, and stopped there. Until a few years ago, where I found a website, forum, called ValiantFans.com. And there I found fellow people that were lovers of Valiant Comics. And it's a great community. Enjoy talking about the old stuff. They helped me, a lot of them, collect the old stuff that I was missing. That was around the time that I started really pursuing getting that collection again. So they helped out a lot to that end, and some of them even with some freebies here and there when I was new to the boards myself. That which I've passed on as kind of a thing that was done for me, and I did for some others, sending them some free comics here and there later on, so paying it forward. And all that leads to the few years back when we finally got word that the IPs, the trademarks, everything was up for grabs, that somebody was battling for it in court. It was coming out of the bankruptcy. Someone was buying it. And we found out slowly but surely that, there was a court battle that went on with some stuff, and out of it came a couple of people that were such fans of Valiant that they wanted to bring it back and tell the great stories again. So, just like in the original Valiant, the stories were the most important thing. Great stories with wonderful characters. That's what it comes down to. If you're reading comics nowadays, there are some good ones out there. I used to read anything that had an X on the title for several years. And where they've gone with all of that, with Marvel and DC and rebooting everything time and time and time again, I just fell away from it. I couldn't handle it anymore. I think the nail in that coffin for me was when they shut down Uncanny X-Men after issue 600. When I grew up, when I was getting into comics, I knew which ones the great comics were. It was Action Comics, it was Detective Comics, it was Amazing Spider-Man, it was Uncanny X-Men, it was Fantastic Four. All of those comics that were around for decades on end, that had, issue numbers in the hundreds. They were the pinnacle. They were the wheat that had been separated from the chaff. They were how you knew it was a good comic. Individual stories, arcs here and there may not live up to the par for the course, but overall, you knew that if it wasn't worthwhile, they wouldn't be doing it. Other issues fell by the wayside here and there. I remember back in the 90s there, they would have the super spectacular double-sized issue number 50. And I would roll my eyes, because it seemed like, big deal. You got to issue number 50. Woo! Who can't get to issue number 50 if the comic's at least decent? That was back in the day. Now, issue number 50, that's an achievement. When Marvel and DC reboot things so often, I've heard lately Daredevil is ending with issue number 36. That one is going to be restarted within a month or two for a new number one. Wolverine and the X-Men is ending with issue number 42. They're not even getting to 50 before rebooting it for some other similar concept with a new number one. I hope that Valiant doesn't go down that road, but that's not the core of what makes them great. It's storytelling. That's my hope. That's something that would be better for me. But what I love about them the most is the storytelling and the great characters. When the universe was dead, the characters I loved enough still to go out and find them and collect them and get their stories back so that I could read them and have it all and know the whole universe. And although I never collected Archer and Armstrong in the 90s, I never collected the Quantum and Woody in the Acclaim years after that. I was never able to latch on and get the Harbinger or Magnus stuff from the beginning. When I went back and collected it later, read those stories, read those books, it was still wonderful stories and great characters for the most part. There's pitfalls and pratfalls everywhere, but here and there in any industry, in any line of things. There's stuff that's better and stuff that's worse. Not everything can be solid gold. But overall, on average, Valiant did it right. They concentrate on the storytelling and the great characters. And that has carried through into the present day with the relaunch in 2012 of a couple of fans that loved the comics so much that they wanted to bring them back into the world and do it right and tell the stories and have the wonderful characters. So Dinesh Shandasamy, I believe it is, apologies if it's wrong, and Jason Kothari started, this off and went through the legal battles, shed the blood, sweat, and tears, dealing with the issues that they had to deal with in order to get to the point where they could start publishing comics again. And they did. So they went from what they had before to, what they've done now. The newer comics, the titles they have now. Archer Armstrong, which, like I said, I never read back in the old days, but I'm loving this new series. It's funny, it's hilarious, and I love the connections to the rest of the universe that it gives. Bloodshot has been really good. I loved the beginning, the man not knowing his history, not knowing who he is, searching for his origin, kind of a Jason Bourne meets Punisher or Wolverine. Eternal Warrior. This series was another one of the ones that I loved quite a bit. Was one of my top 3 or 4 back in the 90s. There's not a lot to go on in these so far, and there's some questions still to be answered that I hope they do well in answering. We'll see how it goes, but so far, not too bad. Not the cream of the crop, but I'm willing to wait and see how it goes. Harbinger is one of my top 2 or 3 comics that they are putting out in the new crop. Dysart kills it. He is, I'd have to say, probably the best writer that Valiant's got as far as I'm concerned. The highs and the lows that he brings in his storytelling and with these characters are wonderful. To the point where, even though I know they're getting ready to kill a character that supposedly one of the characters from the main cast, the main 5, what amazes me is that the discussions that go on the forum about who this is going to be, who's going to bite the bullet, who they're going to kill, nobody knows. There's not this one character out there that is part of the team that everyone knows is just, the token that's there to be sacrificed, the sacrificial lamb. It could be anybody, and for very different reasons. And all of them have people that speak for them or against them. Each of the characters has somebody that, it's that they're the favorite character of someone. And all of them will have a different impact. If it was them that was the one that dies, each one of them would have a different voice, a different message that would come out of that if they were the one that was lost to the team. So what amazes me, I guess, is Dysart's ability to have that kind of an event coming up and people know about it, but that it's not known who it's going to be. It's so well written that it's not obvious. He keeps us guessing right up to the end. So, props for the best writing, the best storytelling, I'd say overall in Valiant so far, I would give to Josh Dysart and his work on Harbinger.